Hi everyone, it's me, the Booknester, and I thought I would change it up a little bit. It is January, so we like to make our changes at the beginning of the year, right? I'm going to start trying to bring something I'm going to call 2 Down and 2 to Go. And basically all it is 2 books that I've read and the next 2 that I'm going to pick up. I figure that way it allows some leeway. It's not as long of a TBR necessarily, and I talk about books that I have read and then about the books that I'm hoping to read. So the first book that I completed in January of 2017, and I completed it on January 1st, 2017, is a little known book that I keep bringing up, The Last Days of Night by Graham Moore. Overall, it's a great read. What's the book about?
We now know 1,000 ways not to build a light bulb, and according to Thomas Edison's biggest critics, they believe that he knew at least 1,000 and never did get it quite right. So The Last Days of Night by Graham Moore is a historical fiction novel with historical figures as the key characters. Who were these historical figures? There was Thomas Edison, Nikola Tesla, George Westinghouse, and a little less well-known young man at the time, Paul Craveth. Now, what is this story completely about? Well, it revolves all around this, which was U.S. patent number 223898, which was the electric lamp and was given to Thomas Edison, who subsequently said any light bulbs, in this case, that were made after that all stemmed from this patent, and he should receive money for it. Now, whenever we start with this story, Edison is already decided to put suits, in fact, 312 of them, against George Westinghouse. Edison claims that he created the light bulb. George Westinghouse is arguing that he did it better. In other words, he took the idea, but what he created was so far improved that it really was its own unique invention, and therefore none of his profits or any of his money that he received from all these light bulbs he was sending out belonged to Edison. And what does Nikola Tesla say? Y'all are all doing it wrong. And that's because they were still working off of a DC electrical platform, and he believed in the AC, which of course is what we use now because it's incredibly efficient and you can get electricity sent so much further afield than you ever could have with DC. And that's why we don't use DC anymore. But if there's patent infringements, if there's lawyers to be in the middle of all this, you'd need a good one. Well, this one is a young one at the time. Now, this picture is of him when he's older. And Westinghouse kind of took a chance with him. But the idea was so many lawyers were in the back pocket of Edison and his supporters that he needed somebody young and somebody outside of that. And that is the basis of the story and where it goes. Now, what does the story have? It's a thriller. There's possible murders. There's some amazing stunts and the publicity and the use of newspapers. But behind it all is money. And in comes J.P. Morgan, who just wanted to be shown the money.
The book itself, I think I would have so much enjoyed had I picked it up in October, and this is the reason why. Because there are so many, well, only true historical figures in this fiction book, and I have recently read about the majority of the characters involved, I kept catching myself questioning their movement, their motives, kind of what was going on. Now, as I said, Graham Moore has taken almost 9 or 10 years of history and truncated it into just 2. And so we are focusing on the different events that happened. Now, some of them happened, some of them are definitely fictional, and he's mixed the timelines up. Graham Moore writes wonderfully. So what I would suggest with this book is read it first, and then you are going to walk off like I did with a list of people, real historical figures that you're going to want to know more about. So perhaps in this case, it ended up being one of those things. I should have read the historical fiction first before the nonfiction. Now, recently I've learned I think there's a movie being made based off of this book. And while I think it's great that there's movies made about these things, as there was about The Imitation Game, and it does draw focus onto historical figures we may not know as a household name, like Tesla, I do worry that if they go too much by this book, again, the general public's not going to go out and really look at how this was done. However, another really great thing in this book is that as you move through the book, there is a section in the back of the book that Graham Moore has created that actually explains what you're reading about. And he kind of lets you know what is fiction, what's been moved in that timeline, what might have happened completely independently at a different point. And it gave a lot of legitimacy to the story. But some of the fictionized portions, I didn't see why we needed to necessarily go there. And perhaps the only thing that kind of left a sour taste in my mouth at the end of the book was this: the lawyer hates Edison. But the end of the book is they're all holding champagne glasses, flutes, staring out over the Niagara Falls that have just been hooked up to basically be able to make electricity, which was Westinghouse's generators that were doing that. And they're laughing almost, and you get this impression that they're slapping each other on the back, and, all hatchets were buried. So, unfortunately, that little last scene, ooh. But I do recommend this to anyone that is interested in historical fiction, especially with this turn of the century and all of the stuff that was going on in New York. I think it's wonderful for that aspect. You meet all kinds of characters, from Alexander Graham Bell to even meeting John Wilkes Booth's brother, Edwin Booth, and what he was trying to do here in New York. Some great characters. And like I said, I walked away with wanting to go read more about some of these characters. So from all those aspects, it's a great book, but I would suggest read this one first and then go find out more about each and every one of the individuals. So my second book is Mr. Churchill's Secretary. And I found this actually because of a subsequent novel that's in this series. So basically, what do we have? We have a young lady who is English, but she was raised in America. Both her parents are English. And she is over at the beginning of World War II over in England, in London. She now has landed a job with Winston Churchill. And she's at number 10. And she ends up being one of his secretaries. But she got that job because the girl that was in that role before dies. And that's the opening scene. So I thought this was going to be a mystery. I thought this was all about finding out who killed that girl. And the interesting thing is at first, as I'm reading through it, I got really wrapped up in the story. And it is all about what's going on back in England. There's some fantastic historical references and notes in here. And the writing is very, very fun. It's intelligent. You've got great characters. But we spend a lot of time doing that and kind of establishing. And, you have a couple of moments where there are air raids and you get little glimpses of Mr. Churchill and his pets. But there was no mystery really being solved. Nobody really went to go find out what was going on, what went on with this girl that you meet at the very beginning. So I was getting confused. And then you start getting this other aspect in there. And it's something I had no idea happened during World War II. Again, this is the way that I learned stuff, and is the IRA was very active in and around that time. And so you have a little bit of that coming in here. You hear about Bletchley Circle, which is, of course, The Imitation Game, and Alan Turing and all that. And you're following, and she has a mystery in her background. And so what this really ended up being was somewhat of a espionage spy type book. And also you're discovering about her. It kind of has a little bit of that flapper feel to it, but yet this oppression that that the war is there, and they keep getting rocked back into that. So I really have enjoyed the writing of it. I've enjoyed the story. It ends up being a spy/mystery thriller, but it's not a mystery dun 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 whodunit type thing. Everything gets sewn up very nicely by the end of it, And I find her a very interesting character in that she is educated. Her aunt is also highly educated, and actually at Wellesley, and her aunt was is a professor there as well. She's a mathematician. She was going to be going off to MIT to get a doctorate in mathematics. So she's clever, she's intelligent. The characters around her were too, and you find different people that you enjoy hearing a little bit about. I am definitely going to continue on with this series. I believe there's at least 3 books, counting this one, in it right now. I think it's a great series if you're looking for one. I don't know where the next ones go. I assume maybe we continue on, maybe not with Mr. Churchill directly, but into World War II. I know that one of them puts her back on stateside and she's helping out Mrs. Roosevelt. So this is a more typical historical fiction than what I normally read. And this is where you have characters interacting with historical figures rather than all the characters being historical figures. So it makes it much easier for me to get into it and relax that it's a story and not question every little thing. Gives me lots of things then to go research if I have questions myself. So definitely one that I would recommend, and like I said, I want to continue on, and it's a beautiful cover. Beautiful cover. So now, what am I on to reading? Well, this is the fun part. Well, the other ones were fun, but now I'm looking for the next one. So one of the books that I am reading, I'm so excited to start, is a buddy read with Kate Howe. She actually is letting me be one of her few buddy reads. She's cutting back, but we have talked about this, and this is a book that has been everywhere, so I'm not going to go into a big description about it, but it is Burial Rites by Hannah Kent, and I was so excited, just picked this up from the library this morning, and it is another historical fiction about a woman who was the last woman that was executed in Iceland. Yes, so cold, dark, and mysterious historical fiction. I'm very excited about that one. And then the other one that I'm hoping to get to actually will work for one of my Pop Sugar challenges, and that is the one where we're supposed to find like a season in the title. And so I have decided to pick up Mr. John Steinbeck's The Winter of Our Discontent. Love this. This one actually I bought from the Strand. It is used. It says that it is from 1961, which would make it possibly definitely a, one of the earlier prints. It is a hardback, a beautiful cover. Just very, very glad that I was able to pick it up. And I haven't read Steinbeck since high school. And to be honest, I think I liked Grapes of Wrath, but I really don't remember. So I'm looking forward to getting into The Winter of Our Discontent. So that's what I'm reading. So it was 2 down and 2 to go.